Las Vegas Motor Speedway. NASCAR's racing in a town this weekend that's all about the numbers. So I figured this would be a great chance to bring on Ryan Stevens from wintherace.info. They're all about analytics. Next level stats, complicated models, a lot of great resources at wintherace.info. Ryan joins the show today to share some of the hard numbers with us. Talk Hendrick Motorsports. Will they pick up where they left off last year? Joe Gibbs Racing, Toyota, more broadly, they've been strong at the mile and a half, but have an all-new Camry. What kind of underdog should we roll the dice on this weekend? Let's talk all things Las Vegas with Ryan Stevens. Ryan, it's great to see you here once again. We're finally getting away from the highly unpredictable drafting tracks and super speedways. But as we were just talking about, with all the changes this year, a new Ford, a new Toyota, wind gusts in the 30 to 40 mile per hour range this weekend, Las Vegas has plenty of variables. Let's talk about some of the betting odds and the trends ahead of this weekend. First, I want to ask you, Ryan, I know over at Win the Race, you guys are very data, very stats focused. What kind of analytics are you looking at when trying to make your betting or fantasy picks for this weekend in particular?
Well, on Win the Race, we have like what's called true performance ranks. And what that takes is kind of all the data that NASCAR spits out after a race, whether it's speed, average running position, things like that, whatever we think is most important, weigh it out, and then give a true score to each driver after every race. In looking at that, we like to look at the tracks that are similar to where we're racing this weekend. So Vegas, we'll look at obviously both Vegas races from last year and in the next gen era, really. And then Kansas would probably be next up. You could even look at Charlotte a little bit. Basically, like 1.5s that are starting to show some tire wear because now we're starting to see more tire wear at Vegas as well. Prior results, too, some people are just good at a certain track. Yeah. So you kind of mix that, blend that all together. A guy like Truex comes to mind. Since stage racing became a thing, he's finished in the top 10 12 out of 13 times. 6 out of 13 of those have been top fives. Has a couple wins. So I like looking at stuff like that because that's through different generations of cars as well, and packages that they've ran. So someone like that is just good here. So you can kind of count on them, I think. So
yeah,
just things like that, pretty basic stuff.
I know it's tricky this week because, again, of all the car changes, but that's a great point about Truex. Regardless of what generation of Camry, what generation of Cup car, he's had good success at Las Vegas Motor Speedway and many similar mile and a halves. I want to start with Hendrick Motorsports. They may not be the most efficient bet this weekend, but maybe for fantasy players out there, Kyle Larson and William Byron won the 2 Las Vegas races here last year. In fact, in this race, the Pennzoil 400 a year ago, if I recall, Hendrick Motorsports finished 1, 2, 3. So what are you looking at? What are you seeing? How do you feel about the 4 Hendrick Motorsports drivers' chances this week?
I mean, I love them. I mean, one thing that we know is they're not the ones with the new body. So,
that's true.
They should, and we'll see, show up fast again. What I'm wondering is, do Elliott and Bowman get some of that speed that we saw Larson and Byron have last year? And Bowman did. I mean, Bowman finished third in that Las Vegas race. I had him top 10 in true performance ranks at both Vegas races. This number is no longer available, but I did take him 30-1 to start the week here to win. I think he's, with Larson being such a heavy favorite, kind of opened up some value on the other guys, even his teammate, William Byron. I don't know. I think that's the biggest thing to watch is, can this team even out a little bit, or are we just going to have 2 guys, Larson and Byron, run away again?
Well, Alex Bowman, if I'm not mistaken, this is just off the top of my head, he's riding a near 2-year winless streak going back to Las Vegas, right? 2022, I think, was his last NASCAR Cup Series win. So he's had success here in recent memory. So maybe some good vibes, some good energy going Alex Bowman's way. Will anyone break up the Chevrolet dominance this year? That's what I want to know. Across Trucks, Xfinity, and Cup, the bow ties have won every single race so far this year. But you mentioned Martin Truex Jr. earlier. What about Toyota? I remember going back to the off-season tests, TRDs, David Wilson sounded very confident. Granted, that was at Phoenix, but he felt like their new Camry could run up front, could work their way through the pack better than anyone else. So this will be the first real, true intermediate track test. I like Christopher Bell this week. He scored a top 5 in both Las Vegas races. Am I crazy? Am I going too deep, too far? Or is there another Toyota that maybe catches your eye?
No, I love Christopher Bell this week as well. I actually, for a show that I was going to do last night, I have there was a head-to-head. It was Ryan Blaney versus Christopher Bell, which I
Mm.
thought was very interesting because it is two drivers with the new body. And Blaney, obviously won the championship last year, was of the Fords who largely struggled on this track type. He was the best one, probably followed by Keselowski. But Bell, I do practice and qualifying ranks every week they include the true performance ranks and many other things that I look at, track performance, all that stuff that we've been talking about. But Bell is in the first tier. I have a tier of 7 drivers that I would say are probably my favorites to win, and Bell's included in that. Blaney's actually the first one outside of that. So yeah, I think Bell could get it done. He had the third best true average running position at Vegas and Kansas last year. Christopher Bell did. Behind the guys that we talked about, and Denny Hamlin was up there as well. So yeah, I'd say the biggest challenge would be beating his own teammate in Denny, but Bell's definitely live this weekend.
Yeah. Well, we talk a lot about who's going to win, but obviously there can only be one winning driver. There's 40 losers, what have you. So are there any interesting top 10 or top 5 picks? Or again, for folks playing fantasy, maybe a value pick out there that isn't likely to win the race, but you can maybe bet on getting a really solid result, this being one of their best tracks?
I think for this week, and this is largely because of how the books handle it. So when the numbers came out for top fives and top tens, there's not a lot of value. They almost price top tens as if we're still on a drafting track like we were the last 2 weeks. So it's been very hard to try and find someone, that you like to bet on. I do think there are some value in the head-to-heads though, like the Bell that we just mentioned. Uh, Toyota was so far ahead of Ford last year at this track type that even if the new bodies change, I mean, Ford would have to make a significant change here in order to catch Toyota in my eyes. And they would have to have messed up pretty badly to lose that much speed for it to all even out. So there's a couple head to heads. I mentioned the Christopher Bell over Blaney. You could also do Truex, who I've already talked about here, over Logano. And there's ways to kind of hedge around that too. Like it might be betting against yourself, but you could bet Truex to beat Logano in a head-to-head. But if you think Ford just comes out and does smash, Logano's been great here. You could even bet him to win. He has very long odds to win here, 16-1, 18-1. I've seen places. You could do both. I don't always recommend betting against yourself, but hey, if you want to hedge it a little bit and say, well, if Logano's going to beat Truex, he's probably going to win the race. So that's a way to do it. But I think head-to-heads are a smart way. And Greg actually wrote up Bubba Wallace head-to-head that we can maybe put the link in the description or something. It's right on Daily Downforce, but he posted that today, a head-to-head that he's most confident in.
I do like the Bubba Wallace pick. He scored a top 5, I believe, in the spring race here last year, and we saw at the end of the year, Bubba Wallace obviously fast at Kansas, as 2311 and Toyota typically are, but also fast at Texas. Remember, Bubba Wallace almost won the Texas playoff race last fall. I like that pick. It's like you said, sometimes it's a numbers game. More better to play the numbers, I guess, than at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Brian, great to have you on. It's fun to always talk stats, even if fans aren't the biggest NASCAR or sports bettors themselves, or even play fantasy. It's always good to hear some of those next level stats that you and the folks that win the race are able to provide, because it gives us a lot of interesting names and drivers to watch for heading into the weekend. So I appreciate you sharing that stuff with us today.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and I want to say that too. Is we're never trying to talk anyone into placing bets or anything like that. It's more, we were NASCAR fans first before we started this site, so it's really just geeking out on the stats. We love it, can't get enough of it. So if you are a NASCAR fan, come check it out. See your favorite stats and your favorite drivers, and we want to have fun first. So
absolutely, yeah. We never want to encourage anyone to bet or do anything outside of their means. It's all meant to just be something kind of fun off on the side here to give you another reason to watch, something else to pay attention to during the race each Sunday. But Ryan, really appreciate you being on the show. Like you mentioned, we'll put a link to that great piece from your buddy Greg Mathern down in the description below. But appreciate you being on the show. Thanks for doing this week.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.